Hey YouTube, today I'm doing a live guitar lesson for my students Blake and Colin, and they've been working on power chords, using power chords in a few Metallica tunes and other metal tunes, and I wanted to help them out with moving power chords around the fretboard efficiently, because it feels different when you're doing a power chord down here on the low frets that are wider apart than it feels up here when the frets are closer together, and it feels a certain way moving power chords linearly across the strings, or linearly up and down the strings, and it feels different moving them hopping from one string to another. So I'm going to give them a couple of exercises to help with this. Here's the first one. I'm going to play it first and then I'll explain it. So to start this, make sure you have your power chord shape, your basic shape down. That is like this, with your first finger going flat across the strings. It's touching all of them, but it's not pressing any of them except for the low E string down there like that. So it's touching all the rest so that they just get muted out. You're touching that one, so if you just play with your first finger, you should get one clear note and then 5 clunks after it. So you can strum all the strings if you want to. Then you have fingers 3 and 4 curved around on the A string and the D string. They're curved over the top, just like, it's hard to see that, but they're curved over the top just like you'd normally be fretting notes, with all of those knuckles curved like this. That's what your third and fourth finger should look like when you're playing power chords. So it's a little bit weird having your third and fourth fingers do this, and your first finger doing this flat across the strings. But that's the kind of orientation you want. Your middle finger just stays out of the way. So we get your basic power chord shape going, and now to start moving it around the fretboard, what I'm doing is going fret 5, fret 3, back and forth. And I'm only thinking of the fret that my first finger is on. I'm not thinking of fret 5, 7, 7 or 7, 7, 5. I'm just doing power chord fret 5, root on the low E string. So fret 5, fret 3, moving back and forth between those. And I'm strumming each of them twice like this. And you want to try to make sure that the strums are nice and even. And if you find that you can't make it to the new chord in time, 2 things you can do. One is just slow down the strumming. That gives you lots of time to keep the strumming nice and even. The other thing you can do is put your right hand on autopilot to make sure the strums are coming out at the right time. So it's like giving your left hand a timer, saying we're going to strum again in about half a second, and if you're not ready, we're going anyway. That's what your right hand is effectively doing when you do this. So maybe it might come out like, maybe you're not ready for the next chord in time, but you do your darndest with your left hand to get to that new chord in time. But either way, you're still strumming evenly with your right hand all the way through. You don't want to be doing this and then stop and wait for your left hand to get ready. You don't want your right hand waiting for your left hand to get ready. You either slow the whole thing down, or you just plow through with your right hand and try to clean up your left hand on the fly like that. So there are 2 ways to change that chord back and forth. The way that I was doing was releasing the last chord before moving it. So I have a moment of silence as I'm moving in between, and I might get some of this squeaky in there. And right now, don't worry about that. If you're squeaking in between the chords, there are things later on that we can do with it, but that's not what we're trying to tackle here. So there's silence in between the chords as I'm changing between them. The other way you can do it is like this. And that puts no silence in between them. That just sounds like you've just instantly transported from one chord to the next. What I'm doing there is just sliding the whole thing. That's what my left hand's doing, is sliding from one power chord shape to the other as fast as I can. And I'm trying to get that whole slide in the space of the strum so that it sounds seamless as I'm moving back and forth. So So those are the two ways that you can be moving your power chords around. And you want to try to practice both ways. If you like one of them more, that's fine. You can practice that more. But you should definitely pay attention to when you're playing actual songs. What does it sound like? Does it sound like there's space between the chords, or does it sound like the chords are seamless? And that will dictate what you need to do in that particular song or that riff or whatever you're playing. So next thing we can do is try moving a little bit farther. And obviously, we can just choose arbitrarily wherever we want to go. But for the purpose of this exercise, I'm going to dictate here and here. So that was 5 and 3. We're moving back and forth between those. Next, do 5 and 8. So we're doing 2 strums on each. Fret 5, then fret 8. So that was having the silence in between the chords. Now let's have them seamless. Next step, we're going to do the same thing, but root on the 5th string now. So we go to fret 5, the root is on the 5th string, right there, and then fingers 3 and 4 are curled over like they were before. First finger is doing the same job as it was before, flat across all the strings, but now it's fretting the 5th fret, and it has one more job. It has to deaden the low E string as well. That's the tip of the first finger has to stay in contact with that low E string. Otherwise, we get that muddy sound. We get our power chord plus that awful low E string that usually doesn't work well with whatever power chord you're playing. So now we're going to do the same thing, fret 5 and 3, and then fret 5 and 8 after that. So we got fret 5 and 3. And try it seamless. Now we do 5 and 8. And try it seamless. And you might notice that the seamless version, you can hear some of the slide happening between the power chords. And if I do this really slowly, you can hear more of it. That's what it sounds like in slow motion. If I do that really fast, that's what it sounds like, but you don't notice it because it's just coming by so quickly. But that little bit of a slide might be desirable in whatever song you're playing. Might be more desirable than this. That silence in between. So just listen for, when you're playing a tune, listen for what it sounds like and what's called for in your left hand. Next step is moving between strings. So what we just did covers moving horizontally along the same strings. And obviously we can take that further and move all kinds of jumps all over the guitar fretboard. But I just wanted to stay sort of in a comfort zone, right in the middle of what we normally play here. Next step is move between strings. So we're moving, let's take 5th fret. Now we're moving from root 6 to root 5 back and forth. So root 6, first finger is covering all the strings and fretting on the low E string, and then root 5, it's covering 5 strings, fretting on the A string, and then touching with the fingertip on the low E string. So this works on getting in and out of that root 5 position where your first finger has that extra job to do. The nice thing about this is that you don't get any more squeaky stuff happening between the chords, but you have to lift up all of your fingers and move them to a new place, move them to a new string without anything to grab onto in between. So here, as we're moving left and right, you could just keep them on the strings. Here, we have to jump from one string to the next. And you want to make that jump as small as possible. Like maybe you don't even leave contact of the strings and come back. Yeah, as I'm doing this, probably can't see it. It's not close enough. but I'm not really leaving contact of the strings. I'm just sort of crawling from one to the next. My fingers don't have any moments where they're not touching any strings. So I just sort of manhandle my way across them, gently manhandle my way across. So the thing, let's try doing that seamless, because there's a trick to doing this seamlessly. Yeah, sorry. That's another thing you want to avoid. Now, doing this seamlessly is a little bit different from when we were sliding back and forth, because you could just do the slide in the same time that you were doing the strum. Now there's no slide, and there's no way to like use your left hand to create constant sound going. Like if I didn't strum when we were doing the slides, it would just sound like... You'd still be hearing the chords, and so I just strum along with it, and we don't hear any gap in between. Here, we have that stop and start on every chord. So here it's more challenging. You just have to do it really fast. So just keep in mind, what does the song sound like when you're doing that, and what's necessary for you to do in your left hand. So I've given you, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 exercises now. The lateral ones, the horizontal ones going along the same string. Now a vertical one where you're going across different strings. Now I want to give you, let's say, 4 more, and they'll all be very similar now. So we're going to use some of the same landmarks that we were just traveling between with the last few exercises. So we had on the root 6 and root 5, we've been touching on the 3rd fret, 5th fret, and 8th fret. That's where the first finger's been going for all of these power chords. So I want to make a couple circles, or rectangles, I guess, in those different areas. So we're going to start here. Let's start here, 5th fret, root 5. And we're going to go in a circle. We're going to go from here down to fret 3, root 5. Now we're going to switch strings down to fret 3, root 6. Now we're going to go up 2 frets on root 6. Those are our 4 stops. We're going to land back where we started. Again, that's root 5, fret 5. Now it's root 5, fret 3. Now it's root 6, fret 3, and root 6, fret 5. We're going to strum each of those twice, just like we were doing all of the others. Do it at whatever speed is comfortable for you, and try to make sure that your strums are coming out nice and even all the time. And you'll notice that this gets us all 4 different movements that we've done so far, where you go down the fretboard this way, going down on the same strings. Then we go down strings on the same fret. We go up frets on the same strings, and then we go up strings on the same frets. We get all 4 of these different transitions that you're working when you go around in a circle like this. Next, let's go around the other way. So we're going root 5, fret 5, then root 6, then down 2 frets, back up to root 5. And that's our circle. Rectangle, sorry. Next, we're going to do the same thing, but using fret 5 and 8. So now we're going to start at the same spot. Root 5, fret 5. Now let's go up 3 frets to fret 8, root 5. Now let's switch strings to root 6 on fret 8. Now we go back down to fret 5 on root 6. Then back where we started, root 5, fret 5. now same thing backwards. So we're going root 5, fret 5, switch strings to root 6, move up to fret 8, switch strings to root 5, back down where we started, root 5, fret 5. So those couple little exercises sound more musical than just taking 2 chords back and forth, and they get you all of the work, all of the different transitions between chords that we've covered previously on the simpler exercises. So if I play them a little faster, I don't know, maybe they sound like real songs to you. I remember when I was learning a bunch of power chord tunes, mostly punk rock stuff when I was a kid, these little shapes would come up all the time, all over different parts of the fretboard. And so I ended up getting good at like going around in these little rectangles. Or back the other way. Or doing frets 5 and 8, we can go. Or back the other way, we can go. So we get the sound of a lot of different songs are kind of embedded in those little, going around in those little rectangles. And they happen all the time when you're playing tunes that have a lot of power chords that move all over the fretboard like that. So doing these little exercises will really, really help when it comes time to play those tunes. It'll be a lot easier to kind of consume them into your fingers. That's it for today. Let me know how it goes. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.